What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over several things that you're going to want to change or do if you actually want to get better at Fortnite. This video is mainly going to be about your mindset when it comes to approaching improving at the game, and less about specific in-game tips. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like. Subscribe if you'd like to see more. If you would like to use my code in the item shop, it is EvolveJake, like my channel name is. And as I said, this is going to be how you want to approach the game if you actually want to improve. And most of this, or pretty much all of it, is just going to boil down to being willing to take a step or two backwards, to take several steps forward in the long run, and being okay with seeing worse results in the short term to actually improve in the long term. I think battle royales are a very difficult genre for players to improve in, because winning is seen as such an important thing, or winning is seen as the initial goal early on. And this makes complete sense. That's like the main thing you do in a battle royale. But if you're only playing for wins or only concerned about winning, a lot of times people will, play safer or play a lot more passive, because that typically is seen as the easiest way to get wins. If you want to win a match, just hide all game and then get lucky in third party the last fight, and anybody can win a game, right? And I completely understand if you're going to want to play like this for your first win or very early on. But after a while, if you're continuing to play like this, you're really handicapping your own improvement and holding yourself back. And so that would be the biggest piece of advice in this video, is just be okay with taking a few steps backwards. Be okay with losing games. Be okay with a worse win rate to actually improve in the long term. If you're only playing safe and you're only playing to win, you're making yourself take less from each game in an improvement aspect. And the biggest way that this is going to impact your improvement is just going to be that I would highly recommend getting in more fights. As I said, a lot of newer players, they play very scared, they play very passive, they just want to win. And because of that, they don't get in many fights. And since they don't get in many fights, they don't have many opportunities to practice fighting. And with that lack of practice, they're going to improve in fighting at a slower rate than someone who does play a bit more aggressive, plays a bit more loose, and gets in more fights. Like, Fortnite is a PvP game at the end of the day, so fighting is a very essential skill. And once you get to a certain level fighting-wise, you can be at a massive disadvantage in the fight and still win it. Like, the positioning certainly matters, and timing certainly matters, and, the early conditions of the fight, like who gets first shot, and, if you're third-partying, things like that really matter. But if you're fighting somebody who is like 100 times more comfortable than you fighting, and a much better player, they're probably still going to win out. Like, there will be times where, timing just dictates things, but fighting skill really matters. And just getting in more fights and getting that repetition is going to be how you improve as a fighter in this game. Every time you lose a fight, there's something that you could potentially take to improve, from that fight. Whether it's like not using cover well, your aim wasn't good, you were slow to react to them, you were slow to make decisions, all of that stuff matters, right? And the more fights you get in, you're going to build that practice, you're going to get better at all those skills, you're going to build that confidence. But also, every time you lose, like I said, it's a learning opportunity. And if you're denying yourself those losing opportunities and that practice, you're going to get better much slower than people who are playing a bit more loose. And then this kind of goes hand in hand with fighting, I think, but just not playing very scared. Obviously, as I said, a lot of people play passive, but I think a lot of players just fall into playing very scared or like really indecisive. This is something I notice like immediately when I'm spectating somebody. It's just like how decisive they seem or how confident they seem in their own decisions. And I think a lot of people just kind of fall into this indecisiveness of always kind of second guessing everything they're doing and not really sure if they should commit to it or not. And they just end up in some weird middle ground where they do nothing in a lot of situations. And I don't really know what the key to get over this is, aside from just like identifying that this, you're doing this and just trying to be more decisive and make decisions faster. Like, I think one of the most important skills in this game, in addition to fighting, is just being able to quickly make a decision and just do it. Because a lot of times you have very small windows of time to make a decision and just do it. If you're getting shot, if a fight is about to break out, if zone is coming, there's so many things that can limit time in this game. And you need to just make a quick decision and do it. And a lot of times it doesn't even matter if it's the best decision. A 6 out of 10 decision that you commit to is much better than like a 10 out of 10 decision that you take a like way too long to get to, because by the time you finally make that decision, the game might be over at that point. You get very small windows of time to make a decision. So if you do notice yourself being very indecisive, very scared, just try to, think about this before you go into the game. Like, I'm going to be more decisive today, and just do it. It doesn't matter if it's a bad choice. If you lose, whatever. But just being comfortable making decisions, I think, is very important in any game, and Fortnite is, no exception. And the same is going to go with fighting. The more fights you get in, you're going to get that practice. You're going to get better aim. You're going to get better at moving, all of these things. And both of these things, if you force yourself to do it, I think you're going to build more confidence in that aspect, and that is going to go a long way. And not only helping you play better, but just like not second guessing yourself as much. Another kind of hot topic in Fortnite is going to be to not, or what I've talked about this before and people disagree with me, but it's just going to be to not rely on cheese items or like really overpowered items. An example of this season would be like the TIE fighters or the X-Wings. If the only way you get eliminations is using the TIE fighters and the X-Wings, what are you going to do when that's gone, right? What are you going to do next season when it's vaulted? What are you going to do when it gets destroyed? You're probably just going to lose. And next season when it's vaulted, you're probably going to take longer to adapt to the new season's meta because you haven't been actually playing Fortnite for the past few weeks. You've been playing TIE Fighter Simulator. And this is like an easy example to make right now because we have these spaceships in the game. But Fortnite is a game where there's always some sort of like cheese item or some sort of like really overpowered item. We had like the bat last season, the Typhoon Blade the season before that. If the only way you're getting eliminations is with these crutch items, you might see some success in the short term, but you're always going to take steps backwards when these items are vaulted or when they're not available to you, or if you just fight somebody that's actually decent, because like the melee weapons were overpowered, but if you were a good player, you could outplay it, right? The spaceships are, pretty overpowered at times, but if you play properly, you can, counter it or destroy somebody's spaceship or, disable it and then fight them. A good player is going to find ways to outplay you despite these cheese items. And so if the only way you're able to get kills is with it, I would highly recommend, again, just playing without it, trying to get better at like the core elements of the game, like movement and fighting with regular weapons, because that is something that's going to be like a consistent aspect of the game. But also once you get better and kind of improve at those aspects, you're going to be better off than you were relying on the cheese items anyways. Obviously it can be fun, and if you just want to play for fun, that's one thing, but you're 8 minutes into a video about improving in Fortnite. So obviously you probably want to get better, and not relying on these cheese items, I think, is something that can really help you. And it's one of the ways that Fortnite kind of griefs its player base, I think, because they give people these items, and the kind of mindset is so like anybody can get kills and newer players can get kills, right? But if you only use them, you kind of lock yourself to that playstyle and really limit how good you can actually be. So if you want to get better, try to ditch the cheese items. Another thing that I think can really help you when it comes to improving is to use replay mode. And the main thing that is really helpful with replay mode, I think, is to just watch fights back from the opponent's perspective. Whether it's fights you win, whether it's fight you lose, see what it looks like for other players to fight you. Because a lot of times in the moment of the game, especially for players that aren't as comfortable fighting, it feels like there's so much going on and that it's very chaotic, right? And you might think that your movement was good in that situation, and then you watch it back and you're like, I was just standing there, what the heck? The weaknesses that you have, I think, become very apparent when you watch other people fight you. And then on the flip side, when you're fighting somebody that's good, you know what that was like to fight. Like, like, wow, this person was all over the place. They're really hard to track. When you compare those difficult players to fight to what you look like fighting, I think you can learn a lot about what your weaknesses are and like the areas you need to improve. So when you fight somebody that's good, try to think about why they were hard to fight, what made them difficult to fight, how you can emulate that. And then also watching fights back from the enemy's perspective, I think, can really help. Replay mode is a bit buggy though. Like just the nature of the game and the way the internet works. There's times where it doesn't perfectly match up with what happened, or like it might look like you got shot around a corner or something like that. That's just like lag and desync. What you want is more like big picture things about what it looks like to fight you or what it's like to fight other players, and trying to improve on those aspects, again, will help you improve as a player and get much better in the long run. Another thing that I think is just a staple if you want to improve at this game is creative mode. There's countless maps out there that can help you practice many different things like aiming, movement, And then also just maps that allow you to fight other players, which I think is really helpful because the Battle Royale game mode, as I said, a lot of people get on and want to win. They want to play passive. But even if you are playing aggro and BR, matches are long. There's a lot of downtime between fights, and the penalty for losing a fight is even more downtime. If you're playing some sort of creative deathmatch map, you can get in fight after fight after fight after fight with very little downtime and pretty much no penalty for losing. And so you get in many fights much faster, and then that's going to build your muscle memory and help you improve in all those aspects of fighting and help you get better in the long run. So any sort of creative deathmatch where you can fight other players, I would recommend playing that if you want to improve. It's not like you need to play it 8 hours a day, but just 10, 15, 20 minutes a day doing that, you will see improvement in your gameplay in the long run. And reload mode is also much more efficient than regular BR in terms of how fast you can get in fights and the pacing of the game. But it's not as efficient as creative, I would say. So if you just despise creative for whatever reason, maybe run some reload. But either way, both of these game modes offer you much more opportunities to get in fights than just BR does. And then the final thing I want to talk about is just going to be that you could potentially change some settings. And this doesn't mean you need to change your settings. If you feel comfortable with how you play, that's great. But a lot of players they know their sensitivity is too slow and they need to change it. Or they know their keybinds aren't optimal and they should probably change it if they want to improve. But it's that they don't want to take steps backwards to take steps forward. Adjusting to the new settings, you're probably going to play worse in the short term. But as I said, if you do want to improve, you want to think more about long-term improvement. So if your settings are terrible or you've just never really thought about changing them, think about it and maybe end up changing some of your settings or some of your keybinds to make it a bit more optimal. That way you can get better in the long run, even if you do take a few steps back. And that was the core of this video. As I said, be okay with short-term, worse results in the short term to get better results in the long term. But that is going to be it for this video. As always, if you guys did find this to be helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like some more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.